Singing in the rain. What a glorious
Tick tock, time
feeling.
to rock. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone who's watching AP singing in the rain.
It's my favorite song, man.
How do you even know that stuff, man? You grew up in Germany. Weren't you guys
I
singing
don't.
like Deutschland, Deutschland, über alles?
No, nobody sings it in Germany
Oh,
today.
good, good.
Except neo Nazis. No, I know that song from a very philosophically deep, very nice, pleasant movie by the name of A Clockwork Orange, where
Oh, did they
where
sing that? Did they sing that there? Were
yeah,
they singing that? Oh, okay, that makes
yeah,
sense. Because
yeah.
I thought I don't remember who it was back in the day, but it's like one of those old movies that my wife would watch. Like, I don't
Uh-huh.
know. Let's see. He
Yeah.
was singing, and was he dancing? If I don't know, Fred Astaire or something. One of those old movies, like Fred Astaire type movies.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, before we were rudely interrupted and distracted by AP's um,
Insightful.
brilliant philosophical analysis of Clockwork Orange,
Yeah.
um, what were we going to talk about? Oh, fine tuning. Yeah, we're talking about fine tuning of the cosmos. So one of the biggest topics anyone could ever tackle, we're tackling it right here. So we're actually going to look at some clips from people who study these things more than we do.
Mhm.
Some people have dedicated their lives to physics or to examining art. Although I don't think we're going to watch a clip from Dawkins. I don't think he knows a terrible amount about it because he's a biologist rather than cosmologist or something.
How dare you question the Holy Prophet?
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be difficult talking about Richard Dawkins because I have to walk on eggshells because AP will flip out.
Can you imagine if that's how we were? Man,
You better shut up about William Lane Craig, AP.
that would be fantastic.
You're finished. You're finished. So anyway, I don't know exactly what clips we'll get to. We're going to start with a William Lane Craig clip from one of his debates. This was from the debate with Christopher Hitchens. But I basically just grabbed a clip of William Lane Craig giving a short version of the argument from fine tuning. Then we're going to watch Richard Dawkins' response. I didn't see the entire response of Richard Dawkins we're about to see. It's like 4 or 5 minutes. I saw part of it and I thought it was stupid. The part that I saw, I thought was stupid. And he was sitting there with a philosopher, Peter Boghossian. I do not know how Peter Boghossian, even though he's an atheist, I don't know how, as a philosopher, he didn't point out how idiotic Dawkins' response was.
Mhm.
And then, if time permits, we will look at a clip by a Stanford physicist, Leonard Susskind. And he's actually doesn't believe in God, doesn't have any terrible problem with people who do, but see, he's more of a friendly non theist. But he breaks it down what the evidence is, so what the evidence from fine tuning is, and he does a good job breaking down the options as far as explanations go.
Mhm.
Wait, what is this? We got Hindu historian here saying. Got Hindu historian saying, I really, from the bottom of my heart, am convinced I witnessed proof of God with my own 2 ears. Witness proof of God with my own 2 ears. That's interesting. I don't know what he means here.
I probably have to. Yeah.
Maybe come on and tell us about that one day, Hindu historian.
Maybe.
All right, should we go ahead and jump into some clips here since people already made us late?
Yeah, no, probably. Definitely,
I
definitely.
said they made us late. That's funny.
I also want to give a shout out to my boy here. It's just so disrespectful, man. To this
Arguing for atheism.
arguing
Let me
for
see.
atheism,
An introduction to the philosophy of religion.
which is by I can't even read it because
Back it up.
it's Robin.
Back that thing up.
Yeah.
Robin Le Loser.
Robin Le Poitevin, who is a professor of metaphysics, as we have learned at the University of Leeds, and he has this book in which he gives a very different perspective and a more hard to digest analysis sometimes of some of the common arguments for God. But he also gives very interesting responses to both the cosmological and the teleological arguments.
Well,
I got quite a bit of him.
as soon as you said professor of metaphysics, I was like, gosh, might as well write loser across his forehead.
Yeah, that's that.
All right, we ready to jump into a clip?
Sure, yeah, always.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to check out William Lane Craig here first to show what the argument. And guys, keep in mind if you're watching, one good habit to get into is not to automatically jump on the side of whoever side you already happen to be on in these discussions. But like step number one, the foundational step should always be trying to understand what the argument is, trying to understand what the what's being claimed. And then from there, trying to understand what the responses are, like trying to accurately understand. There's way too many examples of people not understanding arguments and then going around and talking about the arguments and either not understanding them or not understanding the criticisms of them and so on. So try to grasp this. And AP, this is going to be playing, but anytime you want to pause it or whatever, just start talking.
Definitely.
In recent decades, scientists have been stunned by the discovery that the initial conditions of the Big Bang were fine-tuned for the existence of intelligent life with a precision and delicacy that literally defy human comprehension. This fine-tuning is of two sorts. First, when the laws of nature are expressed as mathematical equations, you find appearing in them certain constants, like the gravitational constant. These constants are not determined by the laws of nature. The laws of nature are consistent with a wide range of values for these constants. Second,
go
ahead.
So there he's talking about the fine-tuning of the constants. And so what he's talking about there, like if you've ever seen, the equation for law of gravity or something like that, there will be a symbol like G, which is a number. So you'll have the variables in the equation, but then you'll have a constant in the equation. And so there he's talking about the fine tuning that these, in order for life to exist in our universe, at least life as we know it, that those constants like G in the law of gravitation have to be a very precise value, because if they're different, then you don't get, well, something you might not get galaxies at all, let alone life. Any thoughts before we move on, AP? I just want to make sure for anyone who's
I just well, one issue that I take with that is that it's kind of a little bit misrepresented, because when he says, for example, that the initial condition is fine-tuned to such an extent that it is incomprehensible to humans, to us, like when I sit down and research this whole idea of fine-tuning in the initial state of the universe, for example, what I get from physicists, from other scientists, is that it is very complicated, and it looks like the initial state of the universe and the following states made it possible for us to exist in the way that we exist. But if it were different, if it were slightly different, it wouldn't mean it would be so it doesn't mean it would be impossible for any other state to arise and for us to then still exist. What they suggest is maybe it would be different, and if the initial state of the universe were different, then maybe we would be different. We wouldn't be as we are today, or the universe would be different. It's hard to comprehend what exactly would result from a different kind of fine-tuning, as you may want to call it.
Yeah, and that's I don't know what Dawkins says in the clip we're about to see from Dawkins, but I have seen him in the past. So he might talk about that here. I have seen him in other places say, they point out that if you increase the gravitational constant by a tiny little part, that you don't get any. Well, it depends. So in some of the examples, like things would never coalesce into galaxies, or the things wouldn't get off the ground in the Big Bang at all later. You tweak these things even slightly, you don't get the large scale structures that you seem to need for life. And what Dawkins says, keep in mind, guys, we're non-experts, sort of looking at this. I'm not a physicist. AP is not a physicist, so we're looking at people who have dedicated their lives to studying these topics. But
We're noobs.
yeah, what Dawkins proposes in some of his responses is, okay, yes, if you increase the gravitational constant or decrease the gravitational constant, yeah, you don't have things like galaxies or something like that. But what would happen if you increase that, but you also changed other things? Maybe other things can actually compensate for that. I don't know if that's correct. I don't know if that is a reasonable response. But I think what Craig is talking about, as far as what did he say? Did he say incomprehensible or something like that?
Yeah,
or?
yeah, incomprehensible to humans.
He said something like that. I think what Craig is referring to is some of the numbers. When you talk about the fine tuning, some of the numbers, like the cosmological constant, they have to be so precise that I forget what the number is, but it's something like when Craig says it, it's if it differs even one part in 1 in 10 to the 10 to the such and such number, then you don't get our universe, or you don't get life. And I think what he means there, I'm not positive, but I think what he's referring to when he says these are like mind-bogglingly precise numbers, is that, like, human beings do pretty well if we're flipping a coin. We say, what are the odds that I get, heads come up? Oh, 1 and 2. Okay, I understand that. Rolling a die, 1 in 6. What are the odds of rolling a 6? 1 in 6. What are the odds of rolling two double sixes? If you're rolling two dice, you multiply it. 1 in 6 times 1 in 6, so 1 in 36. So we're pretty good at that. We start getting worse when we start talking about 1 in 180 million odds of, like, winning some lottery or something, and we're not as good at that. That's why people keep playing the lottery. They really don't grasp the probabilities involved of winning. But then when you start getting into like if you say like 1 in 10 to the 80th power, we're really bad at assessing those kinds of numbers. Because keep in mind, 10 to the 80th power, that's how many atoms there are in the universe. So if you said 1 in 10 to the 80th, you'd be saying, oh, okay, 1 in 10 to the 80th. So it's a big number. It's somewhat improbable. Now, 1 in 10 to the 80th would be like saying, if I marked one atom in the entire universe, what are the odds that you would pick that one at random? And if you're talking about 1 in 10 to the 10 to the whatever power, our brains don't do a very good job at even comprehending how impossible or how precise these things are. So I think that's what he's on about. But yes, the one of the responses that will have to be considered is yes, increasing or decreasing some of these values, and some of them are much broader. Some of it's if you increase this by 20% or you decrease that by 20%, then you get some important change. But some of them are very, very, very precise, and any slight deviation would mean that we don't exist. And so the question, the issue that AP brought up is, similar to what Dawkins says, as far as what happens if you were able to tweak multiple dials. And so, yeah, we'll have to think about that. Rob Jr. did point out something that many people always point out. Dude looks like David Lee Roth with a haircut. Yes, William Lane Craig does indeed look like David Lee Roth. That's not a criticism. That's one of the biggest rock stars of all time.
It's a compliment. I just noticed that in the comments, somebody named Rhinos said Richard Dawkins is top G, and I thought that is a very, very important point to add to this discussion as well. Yeah.
Super chat from Cheryl here. Lost my bet of $10 at 8 minutes late by 8 minutes, so I guess I'll add another $1 per minute. I was off, so looks like she was betting against us. Betting against us being on time. Yeah. By the way, how are you so frequently? How are you so frequently late? I mean, you grew up in Germany. I don't know what Germany's like, but I would think of them as like the most punctual culture on the planet.
Definitely, but I would say, yeah, definitely. But it's called attention deficit hyperactivity disorder.
Oh, so it's not a cultural thing.
No.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because like Nabil was always 15 minutes late, to the point where, like, I could, if I needed him to be somewhere, I would just tell him, like, I would know what time I needed him to be there, and I would tell him that he has to be there 15 minutes before the time he actually needed to be there, because I know he would show up right on time then. But there, he just called it Pakistani time. But I've heard Pakistani time. I've heard Arab time. So I was wondering if there's like
my family, my father was always punctual, always on time, always does exactly what he said he would do. So I probably didn't get this from my family. I'm just always all over the place, and my mind is going into all kinds of different directions, even under medication. Therefore, this has been my life. Yeah.
This is kind of random, but David Wood asked AP how he thinks a debate between William Lane Craig and Dawkins would go.
It never happened, right?
No, I think they had some part where they were like part of something, but not. I don't think a full debate. But I haven't been following debates for years. But I recall back in the day when Dawkins was being challenged to have a formal debate with Richard Dawkins. I mean, when Dawkins was being challenged to debate William Lane Craig, he was saying, no, it's basically Craig is beneath him. And yet he's facing all these other people who...
The thing is, I think he said, he still says that he's simply not interested in debating theists on a certain thing. He's not interested in the whole idea of debating, of having a structured debate. And I don't think that that he would be a strong debater. Anyway, he's more of a, conversation guy.
Yeah, and keep in mind, like I think William Lane Craig would absolutely crush Richard Dawkins, but that doesn't mean that one is correct and the other is correct. Now, obviously, I believe that William Lane Craig is correct, but you can have someone who's just a superior debater to another person, right? Mm-hmm. So... In other words, you could take a really good debater and put him in a topic against anyone on almost anything, and a really good debater would be able to make a case. Sorry, quick delay here. People are pointing out that there needs to be a slow mode on, and I haven't used this in a while.
Terrible.
And so I keep forgetting how to do it every time I come on here. Oh, I need to go to the live section. What is this, amateur hour, AP?
Exactly, man. What's going on here?
All right, now we got slow mode on, so Troll's got to slow it down. Slow it down, Trolls.
I remember the debate between Sam Harris and him, William Lane Craig, and Christopher Hitchens and William Lane Craig. And the thing is, it really depends on the person. Like, I very much agreed more with Sam Harris than I did with William Lane Craig in the debate that they had. But when you look at the debate, it just looks like William Lane Craig is a much better debater and is, really asserting his position in a much better way. Whereas when he had his debate with Christopher Hitchens, I think there it was Christopher Hitchens basically dominated the thing, in my opinion.
Really?
Yeah.
That is, I've never actually watched that debate.
It's because he has this attitude of okay, you have presented a lot of arguments which I think are completely irrelevant. So he has this attitude that it's just
who Hitchens?
Yeah.
That's interesting because No, I heard that. I didn't watch it because I heard Hitchens got crushed, and I heard people thought he was like drunk or something like that because he did so bad. So I didn't even watch it because I was like, oh, I mean, it would have been a master of rhetoric versus the goat of Christian debaters, and so it would have been interesting. But I heard like atheists thought he was drunk because he was.
Oh, he
Anyway.
was a drinker. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Bountiful Explanation said, but David Wood, there's an unlimited number of planets, so there's bound to be one like Earth. Even if the chance is abysmal, it's still guaranteed. I do not know what you're talking. There is not an unlimited number of planets. So rephrase that to large number of planets or something like that. I mean, unless you're talking multiverse and infinite array of multiverses. I mean, infinite array of universes. You're not dealing with an unlimited number of planets. So keep in mind what I just said. The number of atoms in the entire universe is 10 to the 80th power. So even the number of atoms is, but the number of galaxies is not unlimited. The number of stars is not unlimited. The number of planets is not unlimited. And that's something to keep in mind, because once you start dealing with these big probabilities, there's a tendency to say, oh, but the universe is big or this or that, and not realizing how massive the numbers might be. But all right, let's get back to Craig, because AP really derailed this entire conversation.
In addition to these constants, there are certain arbitrary quantities put in as initial conditions on which the laws of nature operate. For example, the amount of entropy, or the balance between matter and antimatter in the universe. Now, all of these constants and quantities fall into an extraordinarily narrow range of life-permitting values. Were these constants or quantities to be altered by less than a hair's breadth, the balance would be destroyed and life would not exist. To give just one example, the atomic weak force, if it were altered by as little as 1 part out of 10 to the 100th power, would not have permitted a life-permitting universe.
Okay, now that's an example. So he says he said weak nuclear force, right? I think he said weak nuclear force. He said if it were altered in 1 part in 10 to the 100th power, then something bad would happen. Let's see what he said.
1 part out of 10 to the 100th power would not have permitted a life-permitting universe.
Okay, would not have permitted a life-permitting universe. So 2 things there. 1, this is an example of numbers that human beings can't really comprehend. He's saying if this number were different, 1 part in 10 to the 100th power, we think, oh, okay, so that's, small chance, but there's still a chance. That's the Jim Carrey. So you're saying there's a chance or something like that. When, again, the number of atoms in the universe, the number of particles in the entire universe is 10 to the 80th power. So we don't do a very good job at processing those kinds of numbers. Now, the second thing is what along the lines of what AP was saying. Okay, if you change this slightly, what was William Lane Craig's claim? That you rule out a life-permitting universe, and I'm not sure exactly. Now, maybe these guys actually know exactly why you couldn't have life at all. But I would be thinking, if I'm being critical here, I would be thinking something similar to what AP put. Okay, maybe we wouldn't exist, but how do you rule out that any life? How do you rule out all life? Like life could be in a very different form in a different kind of universe. Would that be your thoughts on that, AP?
I mean, there are some scholars who have responded to this issue. Among them is Sean Carroll, who also had a debate with William Lane Craig, by the way, I think. And he responds, and others like I don't know, Alan Guth and professors of physics who respond to this issue with that when you make this statement and when scientists make this statement, all they are doing is they are talking about if something was changed in the universe as it is, or if something was changed in the initial state of the universe, of the Big Bang, then life as it is today would be would maybe not come into existence. But the thing is, the starting point here is we exist the way we do today. The universe exists the way it does today due to certain very specific, very precise standards. But that does not mean that if you tweaked those things, nothing else could have existed or nothing else could exist. It just means the standards in existence are required for our existence and for the current universe's existence as they are right now. If things went differently, something else could arise, and there is no way of ruling out different possibilities. It is just that humans cannot comprehend a different state right now, and then they are also just arguing about possibilities without even having the possibility, or about probabilities without even having the possibility to assess those probabilities, because there are no other universes where you can actually, look at and say, oh, look, in this one, this was different, therefore life didn't come into existence. I mean, the probabilities that we are talking about here are more philosophy than science.
So AP just attacked science and said none of this is.
I didn't. These guys did. I'm just.
AP is just the messenger of wrongness.
I'm just the messenger of science
and stupidity. Read a couple comments. Someone said, "Why don't you guys go live every day? That would be fun. We should just cancel making regular videos and just, or I mean, I guess we could do that in addition, but we should just go like live like every night at 8:00. And
why don't we go live twice or 3 times a day every day?
Oh, that would be cool. Yeah, we'll just hey. Yes. Hey, we actually have a physicist here, Luke Barnes. I saw his presentation. Where was it? I think University of Rutgers or something like that. But Luke Barnes is actually a physicist, so now he's going to point out when we say something wrong, probably, which will be a lot. No. Which will be a lot. Now I don't want to say anything because he's going to be like, "David, you idiot." It's not what the argument is. People are also pointing out, AP, you have the exact same background as William Lane Craig. So maybe you should.
That's funny. I didn't.
Maybe you should take that as a sign. Hey, Luke. Hey, Luke. You should join us. You should join us sometime to break us down and break this down for us, and then find a friendly atheist to join you to help this discussion out, because we get the main points and so on. Even when we were talking about like the cosmological constant and so on, I've seen it explained like 900 times. I still don't process very well what the cosmological constant is. So yeah, if you want to help.
See, I actually made a note of Sean Carroll's response to this very point, which he brings up in response to William Lane Craig, where he says that the whole idea is misrepresented. I don't want to misrepresent Sean Carroll here now, but that's what I made a note of what he says in response to this, which is that life would be difficult or different or incomprehensible. It wouldn't be necessarily impossible. There is no way that you can with certainty make that statement. So that's what he responds with, as far as I've gathered. Again, I don't want to misrepresent the guy.
Yes, and I think as far as if I'm being critical here, because I do agree the universe looks really, really fine-tuned for life once you start listing these constants. If I'm being critical about the arguments being made, then yeah, I would be thinking, all right, what happens if you tweak multiple constants? And then I would like, can you get the same thing? And then if you say no, because for all I know, and I'm thinking defenders of the argument would say, no, you're not getting anything like you. And so there it would seem like you're ruling out life as we know it, but what about the possibility of life as we don't know it? In other words, if you have a different kind of universe, maybe you get a different kind of life. And so just saying no life, again, there may be a knockdown defense of that. In other words, I may be totally wrong right here. Physicists may actually be able to say, no, you're not getting any life. You're not getting any kind of life at all. And here's why. I haven't seen that, so I don't know. That's why I'm asking. And maybe Luke Barnes and someone else can come on and break things down for us. All right, should we?
Yeah, go on. Yeah.
Let's see. Craig here.
Now, there are three possible explanations of this remarkable fine-tuning.
Hey, now this is interesting because he gives a slightly different breakdown of the possibilities than Leonard Susskind, although there's some overlap, but we'll see that in a bit.
Physical necessity, chance, or design. Now, it can't be due to physical necessity because the constants and quantities are independent of the laws of nature. In fact, string theory predicts that there are around 10 to the 500th power different possible universes consistent with nature's laws. So could the fine-tuning be due to chance? Well, the problem...
So he said physical necessity is one possible explanation, and that's the one that Susskind doesn't give. He gives a different one. But so I guess the claim here is that it had to be this way. It just had to be these precise numbers. There's no other way it could have been. And yeah, that seems weird to me. And so the other alternative is that it's chance. Like it could have been a bunch. So he's about to go into chance. And like it could have been a different range of values, but we just got lucky. You know, it's like rolling the dice. Sometimes you get lucky. Sometimes you do win the lottery, despite the probabilities. So he's about to go into chance. You had something to say, AP, or
No.
okay? All right. Let's go through these other options.
This alternative is that the odds against the fine-tunings occurring by accident are so incomprehensibly great that they cannot be reasonably faced. The probability that all the constants and quantities would fall by chance alone into the infinitesimal life-permitting range is vanishingly small. We now know that life-prohibiting universes are vastly more probable than any life-permitting universe. So if the universe were the product of chance...
Can you pause there for a second?
Yep.
So here's the thing that my mind catches and doesn't want to let go. You know, what he just said, that life-prohibiting universes would be much more probable than, life-permitting universes. But we're just talking about probability, right? We're not talking about possible and impossible. We're talking about probable or improbable.
That's true. That's true. So just to clarify, if I said, "Hey, I just won the lottery," well, it was massively more probable that you would lose the lottery, but it's not impossible. It's not impossible for you to win. In fact, it would be stupid. No one would play if it were impossible for you to win. So there is a possibility. So I think you're pointing out there that if you say that our universe is one possible universe, and Craig is saying it's massively more likely because there are so many more ways the universe could be that would not permit life, that I guess we shouldn't take it reasonable. We shouldn't take it as reasonable that we got lucky, that we just got lucky.
Yeah, I would say just because it is more likely that this does not come into existence, and our state is, given the odds, considered by our limited knowledge at this point, considered extremely unlikely. That doesn't mean that doesn't mean that it would be otherwise impossible for the universe or for life to develop. And we're just talking about probability. So maybe we hit the we exist, and we have a certain bias because we exist in this universe. We look around us and we think, wow, I mean, this is almost impossible. Okay, maybe it's true, maybe it is almost impossible, but this is what we think because we exist. We have these functioning minds with which we analyze our existence and then think about the chances of existing or not existing. We are the lucky ones, maybe, who think, wow, this is, it's very, very, very unlikely that this would normally occur. Therefore, this must be very special. Okay, fine. Yeah, acceptable. But what does that really mean? Why can't we just accept the idea that this is chance, this is random, this is how it occurred, and that's all right? I mean, I'm not trying to dismiss the conclusion here that therefore there is intelligent design behind it. I'm just saying I don't see how this is considered sufficient evidence to point in that direction.
Yeah, we're gonna have to. I mean, I guess it's
Maybe I don't get it. I don't know.
the strength of the argument. The strength of the argument is going to come down to like how improbable it is. So that's like one big step, and then sort of ruling out alternative explanations. Because if you said, hey, the universe, a life permitting universe is really improbable. Well, if you mean like 1 in 1,000. Okay, that's improbable, but I mean, keep in mind, improbable stuff happens all the time. Improbable stuff happens every day. If you think about, hey, I woke up and then I did this and then I did that and then I did this. If you calculate the probabilities of all this stuff happening right there, that's pretty improbable. So the question is, like, how improbable are we getting here? And to me, it looks like really, really, really improbable. Now, Luke Barnes here, again, he's a physicist, and he's, I should pull up his, since AP's plugging books by Dumb Atheist, I should plug a book by Smart Theist, Luke Barnes. Although, look at Luke Barnes here. So this is Luke Barnes. He's got his book called A Fortunate Universe. But he says, we have tweaked multiple constants. So we were asking the question about, what happens if you tweaked multiple values. And that's just something I heard from Dawkins. He says we have done this. We have tweaked multiple constants. We do it in the physics literature. In other words, so I guess they're writing papers and saying, okay, if we increase this value and we decrease that. He says, but look how he ruins it all. We have to simplify for popular oscidences. Oscidences. Luke, what's an oscidence? See, now we can't even take your book seriously because you can't spell correctly. Oscidence. Yeah, I need to stop. No, look, actually, good to have you here. Got a super chat.
Notice that.
Got a super chat here. David, did you know how to explain the agreement of free will? I still don't get it. I'm not sure what you're referring to there, but I'm sure in future live streams, we'll be talking about issues like free will. I don't know what you mean by the agreement of free will, or did you mean argument from free will? I don't know what you mean, but yes, I understand. Yes, I used to teach philosophy of human nature, and so we spent a good deal of time talking about different theories of human freedom. With the and there are parallels between, because you have like the scientific issue, like are we determined? Are our thoughts actually determined? Or do we have a libertarian kind of free will, meaning that there's something that rises above the level of physical necessity? But then you have the theistic parallels, like does God actually determine things that you do and so on? So yeah, but I'm sure we'll be discussing issues like that in the future. All right, so let's get back to...
Barnes said an audience is an Australian audience.
What's funny is that's what I thought. I was like, is that Aussie? Aussie-idence?
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and check out more.
The odds are overwhelming that it would be life prohibiting. In order to rescue the alternative of chance, its proponents have therefore been forced to resort to a radical metaphysical hypothesis, namely that there exists an infinite number of randomly ordered, undetectable universes composing a sort of world ensemble or multiverse of which our universe is but a part. Somewhere in this infinite world ensemble, finely tuned universes will appear by chance alone, and we happen to be one such world. Now, wholly apart from the...
Now, that is Susskind, who's he's a physicist at Stanford University. But again, he's a friendly guy. He's not an angry guy. Some of the new atheists come across as very angry, which doesn't mean they're wrong. Just means, wow, it's a little bit harder to have friendly discussions with someone who's perpetually angry and stuff. And that goes for everyone.
It does sound a little bit sus, but yeah.
Susskind sounds like a nice, friendly guy. But he gives that's what he ultimately comes down to, which is interesting. He doesn't like to call it multiverse. He calls it a megaverse, which is, that even sounds cooler to me. But House of Hikmah here points out, this is Wyatt, you can check out his channel, but he says, look at AP's face. He's finished. So AP's breaking down under the power, the weight of the fine tuning.
Absolutely, man.
All right, here we go.
That there's no independent evidence that such a world ensemble even exists, the hypothesis faces a devastating objection. Namely, if our universe is...
What's up?
Hold on. So I heard the multiverse explanation to resolve the problem of fine-tuning before from other people, including, I think, from Sean Carroll or others, who mentioned that it would be a hypothetical explanation to such a problem. But that doesn't mean that they are claiming that there is definitely a metaverse and this just resolves the whole issue. I mean, what they're saying is that this is a hypothesis which would resolve the problem at hand. It is one such possibility, and there is no evidence to rule it out entirely. So responding to that by saying there is no evidence of such a thing would be kind of absurd, because you wouldn't be actually responding to the point made, which is that it is a hypothesis.
Yeah, and so you basically have two different ways to use the multiverse, because there are definitely physicists, cosmologists who believe that there is a multiverse, but you can be appealing to it in two different ways. And so Craig is just pointing out that, hey, there's no separate evidence of a multiverse. So it's like he's saying that it's a cop out. But I mean, look at the options here. If you're saying, hey, our universe seems really, really finely tuned for life, and you say, well, what if we're one of a possibly infinite number of universes? If there's a possibly infinite number of universes with variations in the laws of nature in these different universes, then there would be one. Then there would be one that's life permitting, or there may be many that are life permitting. And so, yeah, you can just posit this as, well, as a matter of fact, you can even do a parallel. If you're going to say, you could say it like this. You could say, look, if you're going to say, hey, it's finely tuned, maybe God. Okay, well, I can say, hey, it's finely tuned, therefore maybe a multiverse. And so there are two different ways. One, you could be just presenting it as, this is a possible explanation for all I know. And you could, as a scientist, you could say, I don't know if there's a multiverse, but if there is, it would help account for some things. Or you could actually be one of the guys who says, no, I believe there's a multiverse, and no, I can't go there. I can't go there and show it to you because we're stuck in ours. But I believe that we are part of a larger multiverse. Why is people asking what I'm drinking?
Because it looks weird.
So what the heck is? I don't know why I'm answering this, but this is just iced coffee. I would normally pour it into a cup, but I was just in too much of I was too lazy to pour it in a cup today.
Incompetent. I want to point out that the audience here seems really unimpressed by the arguments made.
What? Then they're stupid atheists.
Yeah. Okay. That was an important point to add here.
And here we have the free will argument. Sorry for the typo. So responding to the earlier comment, free will argument. Yeah, I don't know what you mean by free will argument. Free will argument for what? Argument for free will, or free will argument for the supernatural or the soul or God? Yeah. All right. Let's see.
Is just a random member of an infinite world ensemble, then it is overwhelmingly more probable that we should be observing a much different universe than what we in fact observe.
So
Roger Penrose has calculated that it is inconceivably more probable that our solar system should suddenly form through a random collision of particles than that a finely tuned universe should exist. Penrose calls it utter chicken feed by comparison. So, if our universe were just a random member of a world ensemble, it is inconceivably more probable that we should be observing an orderly region no larger than our solar system. Observable universes like those are simply much more plenteous in the world ensemble than finely tuned worlds like ours, and therefore ought to be observed by us.
Here's one issue. Even in the observable universe, the idea is that when you generally look around the universe, there is a lot of disorder. If you look at most of the planets that we have discovered so far, most of the objects, the satellites that we have discovered so far, most of it is has no life, is not capable of developing life. Much of it is just random rocks shooting across the galaxies, across the planetary systems. In our solar system alone, there are a lot of rocks randomly shooting around. There's a belt of rocks. There are planets which serve no purpose at all, that have no land to walk on. There are just a bunch of storms and dust.
No one cares about rocks, AP.
Yeah. And
no, but
if,
by the way, I've heard him say this before. I think his point is, if as far as the sort of universes that would form, and maybe I don't understand, but I don't think this is a terribly strong point. But it seems like, well, I don't know, maybe it is. He's saying that our universe, this giant place with all this stuff, is far less likely to form than something small like our solar system. And therefore, I don't know, even if you got something that's life permitting, it would be far more likely that our little solar system would form and you'd get life like that. It would be far more probable for life to form that way than in the way it did. Now, so my problem there would be, I mean, like any way that life formed naturalistically would be extremely improbable. So I don't know.
But even so, I mean, I don't even so, I have to this day still not understood what the problem there is, and I tend to find myself agreeing with the others who present a naturalist position to this, and that's why I wanted to reduce it just to a smaller scale, looking at planets and random objects in the universe. Most of the universe is random chaos, emptiness, disorder. It's actually very interesting that our planet and the life that you find on this planet is very rare among a massive number of visible chaos and emptiness and randomness. I would be more impressed if I looked out there and found that everything that you see out there in the universe is completely meaningful and has complete order and is all going by a certain system. I would be even more impressed if there were letters on planets. I don't know. But it's just...
No, you wouldn't. You just say, oh, chance did it.
Definitely not. But I mean, all of that, I mean, just starting from the micro level just makes it very much conceivable to me that randomness, chance, is what leads you to the state that we are right now, and I'm okay with that. Why would I not be okay with that?
Well, of course, you want to cling to your atheism so you can continue your webcam pimping empire.
That's only acceptable in Islam. Yeah.
Top G. I think he's again, I don't fully I haven't studied enough to really grasp why they say this, but I think he's saying something similar, but on a bigger scale, to what he's pointed out in the past with the Boltzmann brains argument, namely that if things are just, if you've got a multiverse and things are, little universes are randomly forming in this multiverse, then you would be massively more likely to form as some little center of consciousness that invents this world and your own consciousness just to keep yourself entertained. That would be massively more probable than our actual universe forming. And therefore, given the probabilities, you should believe that you're the only thing in the universe and that you've just invented all of this to keep yourself entertained. But again, I don't understand why that's, because notice lots of this is like appeal to authority, which it's not irrelevant. They're not irrelevant appeal to authorities. Some appeals to authority are relevant. If you're talking, hey, this is an expert in this area, and he says this. Irrelevant appeals to authority are just like, hey, this guy is an expert in, insect anatomy, and he says that this coffee drink is great. Okay, that's irrelevant. Who cares if he's an expert in bugs or something like that? But Craig is pointing out what physicists have claimed. So the point,
unless you use insects as ingredients in that drink.
Yeah. So the which, I mean, in the near future we will. So anyway, the point here is, when Craig is saying, Penrose says this, we don't exactly understand. I don't understand like why he's saying that. And so it's kind of taking Penrose's word for various things. All right. Should we finish this? We got 30 seconds left of Craig here.
Since we do not have such observations, that fact strongly disconfirms the multiverse hypothesis. On atheism, at least, then, it is highly probable that there is no world ensemble. The fine-tuning of the universe is therefore plausibly due neither to physical necessity nor to chance. It therefore follows logically that the best explanation is design. Thus, the teleological argument gives us an intelligent designer of the cosmos.
In your face, AP.
Okay, here's the thing. Maybe I don't understand logic.
You don't.
Right? Maybe
you don't believe it. You don't believe in logic. You're an atheist.
Maybe I don't get it, but I still don't understand. After years of hearing this, I still don't understand why it would therefore logically follow that. Okay, if you say it's the best explanation, I guess you could look at it from.
He said something like that. It was weird that he said logically it shows that this is the best explanation is design or something like that. So that's weird because that's normally, because there it sounds probabilistic, but he says logically, which is different. So yeah,
I mean, if you're ruling out the possibilities, if you're saying, okay, this is very low probability, that is very low probability, this is very low probability, therefore the explanation that intelligent design is behind this is much more probable than the others. Therefore, that is the best explanation. If you want to go there, fine. But I just wouldn't think that is on a popular level convincing enough to somebody who is actually looking for a reason to believe in God.
So I put up this book, Fortunate Universe by Luke Bard. So that's the guy who can't spell except for weird Aussie variations for his Australiocentric view of the world. But I'll put a link for people who want to check out a book on the fine tuning of the cosmos. All right, so we went through William Lane Craig.
We destroyed William Lane Craig. Let's get to the next.
I didn't catch it, but I think the best response to the multiverse stuff is, hey, we got Cameron Christianity, capturing Christianity here from Cameron from Capturing Christianity. Gosh, speak.
Cameron Christianity.
Lack of sleep does to people. Stupid coffee, you're not helping. But what was I just talking about? Oh, what I've always thought was a good response to the multiverse stuff, which I didn't catch Craig say there, is that apparently a multiverse would also have to be finely tuned. In other words, if you got this giant machine that's cranking out these other universes, that would have to be finely tuned some way. Not sure. I mean, well, I guess I could think why. It'd be similar to, I mean, if you have a factory that's cranking out other factories, I think you would, that would make sense to be finely tuned. But
I found one response to that I found one response to the whole fine tuning issue very funny, which I also heard from Sean Carroll, which was, I need to look into that and expand my mind on that issue a little bit more. But he basically says, why does God need fine tuning anyway? And I want to go more in depth on that just to figure out how he forms that idea, but that's what I caught on the side.
Jumping Like a Monkey says, can you invite Luke to join the discussion? I already did. Not this particular one because we're going through these video clips, and I would want to do things like check the internet connection and stuff like this and so on. But yeah, Luke is definitely welcome to come on and join us for a future discussion. All right, should we go into...
Yeah. We should also invite Daniel Kikachu and people like that to join here.
You're finished, AP. You're finished.
Theological discussions.
You're finished. The Dawa guys would actually be good as like hype men for actually like actual like theistic philosophers and scientists and so on. You're finished. You're finished, boy. So anyway, guys, as far as thinking about my overall view, because again, if you get down to like the mathematics and stuff like this of origin of the universe, I don't get that stuff. I'm not sure I would ever get it, even if I dedicated my life to it. But I tend to think of it like it's this weird little story, AP. Ready for this?
Yes.
I used to when I was a kid, I would visit my grandmother, and there was a kid who lived across the street from my grandmother. His name was Todd. So I'd go over there and like, play with toys with Todd and stuff. And he actually was cool one day because the first time I was playing with him, he had a transformer. I didn't have any transformers yet. So he had a transformer that he had just gotten. And I started playing with it, and I broke it in like 2 minutes, right? I broke his toy. and then what was really cool was then his mom comes out, and Todd says, "Mom, I was playing with my transformer, and I broke it." And she says, "Oh, that's okay." And I was like, "Whoa, this kid just took the fall for me? He didn't blame me. I thought that was really cool." But then a couple months later, he got a fish tank. It had like 20 fish in it. So he got a fish tank with like 20 fish in it. Anyway, there was a thing, I think it was a thermometer, but there's a thermometer floating around in there. Anyway, we were using the thermometer as a torpedo to torpedo the fish. we're trying to hit the fish with a torpedo. But he was doing it when he actually broke it, right? He held it up too high and it shot down to the bottom and then broke. And then so I left. But a couple days later, I was visiting my grandma again. I'm like, "Hey, we should play." And he goes, "No, you can't come over because my mom doesn't like you." And I go, "Why?" And he goes, "Because I told her you broke the thermometer and all the fish, all the fish died." And I was like, "Wait, so when I do it, you take the fall, and when you do it, you blame me? Like, what is this?" But anyway, point is, without that thermometer keeping everything at just the right temperature and so on, everything just died. So it's like everything had to be in a very narrow range in order for those fish to keep on living. And so as far as me, I think of stuff like that when I try to understand an argument. I try to think of something I can understand, something easy that I can understand. And then that helps with all the stuff I don't understand. So the claim is sort of like our universe is one big fish tank, only the settings have to be extremely, extremely precise in order for us to get life. And if they were varied even slightly, then we don't exist. So that, I think, it is in a nutshell. And now we can go on to the mighty Richard Dawkins for a claim.
This was good. You completely ruined William Lane Craig's thorough argument with this fish tank comparison.
Jealous of my fish tank argument. David Wood's argument for fine tuning from fish tanks. All right.
So I'm curious about a few things. One.
This is part of an interview with Peter Boghossian, a philosopher, interviewing William Lane Craig, and I think he's going to ask about the fine tuning list.
I'm curious about is what's the best argument you've heard for the existence of God? What's the best one?
I don't think there are any good ones, but the nearest approach to a good one, I think, is the argument of the physicists when they say the universe is fine-tuned and that the fundamental constants of physics is sort of half a dozen or so numbers which physicists just give us. These are constants, and physicists don't know why they have the values that they do. But physicists have calculated, some, not all, have calculated that if any of these fundamental constants were changed ever so slightly, that would immediately wipe out the universe. You couldn't have, if you change the gravitational constant slightly, matter would not have formed itself into stars, and therefore you wouldn't have got chemistry forming in the interior of stars. You wouldn't have got the elements, and therefore chemistry, therefore you wouldn't have got life. So you have this sort of image of half a dozen knobs that you twiddle to raise.
He's going to be talking about, this is for, you're too young to remember, AP, but way back in the day, if you wanted to tune a radio in the car, there was a knob there. You had to you had to turn that thing, and then you had to be like, I think that's why it's called fine tuning, because you had to actually like, I can't get this station to come in right, and you're like really, really, really slightly turning this knob. And so the way he's putting it here is like, you have several of these knobs, or as Susskind says, I think he says there are a couple dozen. There are a couple dozen. And they all have to be adjusted just right. Now, what I find interesting about what he said right there is, so the question before him is, what does he think is the best argument, even granting that he doesn't think any of the arguments are good? What I find interesting is he went to fine tuning because Hitchens said something very similar. This was, I don't remember, someone was recording them talking in the back of a car, and it was Hitchens talking to some guy in the back of a car, and that guy was asking about what Hitchens thought was the best, and Hitchens said the same thing, and he said fine. He said, yeah, the fine tuning. He goes, there's something there. There's something where he didn't think there was anything in, like, you know, the origin of the universe, like a universe exploding out of nowhere or something like that. Didn't think there was any much to the moral argument or to the argument from design and biology. But anyway, I find it interesting that both these guys point to fine tuning as something a bit stronger than the other points that they reject.
Well, I mean, the issue is it has a lot of scientific and philosophical elements of things that are very hard to comprehend, and at the current state, not really explicable, which makes it a very very interesting argument for even scientists and even non-theistic philosophers. But there's also something about it that appeals to the human search for meaning and human emotions. The entire you would say, I don't know, the purpose of humans when questioned is kind of attached to this entire argument as well, because the entire argument implies that things have been put in a specific order in order for you to exist, and that is your meaning. So it connects to that very well. It has a very emotional aspect as well. That's why it is so compelling, and at the same time it is scientifically compelling, it is philosophically compelling. That's why it's so strong.
Dennis K. Jold here says it was Hitchens and Dawkins in the back of the car, and I was thinking that didn't sound right. I think I would have remembered Dawkins, but then the terrible YouTuber said Doug Wilson was who he was speaking with. I think that's correct. I mean, there may be other videos where it's Hitchens and Dawkins talking in the back of a car, but yeah, I think it was Doug Wilson sounds correct to me. And I'm only saying this in case someone wanted to look it up and find out where what Hitchens said. So yeah. All right, let's get back to it. Let me rewind this slightly because I cut him off when he was talking about here we go.
Interior of stars. You wouldn't have got the elements, and therefore chemistry, therefore you wouldn't have got life. So you have this sort of image of half a dozen knobs that you twiddle to raise or lower the gain on particular fundamental constants. And there is a theistic argument that says because these knobs are all precisely where they have to be in order to give the kind of universe that would give rise to us, there must have been a divine knob twiddler who set these constants to exactly the right, fine-tune them to exactly the right.
It's always his way of. I don't know. It's funny.
I have to say, I only became familiar with Dawkins once he became popular in the New Atheism, and there were people like Michael Ruse, who was an atheist philosopher, and he said that the God delusion made him embarrassed to be an atheist because the arguments were so horrible. And so my familiarity is with Dawkins is once he started giving arguments about the existence of God. And I always thought like a lot of his responses are terrible, but I watched a lecture by him several years ago when he was talking in his field in biology. And it was one of the most brilliant, insanely brilliant lectures I'd ever seen in my life. And I was like, whoa. So this guy's, it made me realize why he had become famous and popular a long time before the new atheist. But even there, you just saw it, right? Like this divine knob twiddler. It's just the way he puts stuff. But you can imagine, like, I saw him where he's giving, he wasn't talking about the existence of God. He's talking about biology and stuff like that and the history of, biology. And, but he just has I don't know, he has a funny way of putting things. But yeah, brilliant lecturer.
He's an incredible evolutionary biologist and lecturer, and has a way of, communicating with the audience and using humor. This is kind of slightly outside his field, but you can see that there as well.
Look, Fenton says knob means phallus in British slang. We know that. That's an American. that's why we thought it was funny when you say divine knob twiddler. If you just called someone a knob twiddler, you're not thinking about like fine tuning something. that sounds perverted. That's why we were laughing. It wasn't that we didn't get it. It's that we did get it. And that's why the audience got it too. That's why they started laughing. But, all right, back to Dawkins talking about a divine knob twiddler. Oh boy,
That's good value. It's probably the best argument I know. It's still a lousy argument because, of course, it leaves completely unexplained where the divine knob twiddler himself came from.
There's a lesson here, ladies and gentlemen. This is like, and people do this too when they're talking about. You can talk about anything and be putting it in this way. It's like when we talk about Allah, and someone calls him Allah the vagina blower because he blew into Mary's vagina in the Quran. They call him the vagina blower. And you just keep talking about him as the vagina blower or something like that. But that's what Dawkins reminds me of here. It just sucks because now everyone, like, this is becoming PG-13 thanks to Richard Dawkins here. But let's go and see what's I rewound it a little bit.
Probably the best argument I know. It's still a lousy argument because, of course, it leaves completely unexplained where the divine knob twiddler himself came from.
And this is what I mean when he's going to go into this, but I think this is a bad response.
Here. Yeah, he's like this would be more a response that you could bring up to a basic cosmological argument for God, right?
Yeah, the thing it's like he, and the part that's bothering me here is he says this isn't a very good argument because and now you're expecting, okay, what's the main reason? And I'm like, if this is the reason it's a bad argument, then maybe it's a slam dunk argument because your response here is dumb. And what's weird is Peter Boghossian should know better, right? He should know better. And what's weird is like Hume in the dialogues was arguing brilliantly, but Hume made the same point. It's like, hey, if you're arguing for design and you leave out the sort of identity of the designer, you haven't really explained anything. You might as well just stop. And that's the point that Dawkins. Let's go ahead and let him finish his point here, and then we can.
You have to have a supernatural, superhuman intelligence to know exactly what values to twiddle the knobs to, and if you're going to be allowed to postulate an intelligence right from...
Are you still laughing about the knob twiddling? Is that what you're grinning at? Okay, me too. Sorry about that. This, ladies and gentlemen, this is what you end up with when you have atheists in your live stream. Got Richard Dawkins and then AP,
so immature.
And now we're trying to discuss deep philosophical issues, scientific issues. Instead, we're talking about all this perverted stuff, thanks to the atheists among us. Oh no, David's bashing atheists. All right, here we go.
Start of the universe. Then you might as well just postulate the fundamental constants themselves. There are other explanations for the finding.
So there you had it. So, and again, he points this out as the problem that you haven't identified the knob twiddler, and therefore you might as well just stop it. If you're not going to explain that, you might as well stop with the explanation. You might as well just stop and say, okay, there are these constants. That's the end of that's the way they are. That's it. Because if you're just going to say, well, God did it, then you're just saying, well, how is that a better explanation?
I mean,
I believe he's wrong here, but I think that's all he's saying, and I think that's lame. But go ahead.
My response to that is, when I see that, how I respond in my mind to it as I'm hearing it is, hey, nice. It's good that you're thinking about who created the creator or who designed the designer, but that's not really the argument here, right? I mean, you are responding to a different issue. That's a question for a different time, and that's a question that you could bring up when you talk about the necessity of a creator. But if you specifically want to argue why the argument from intelligent design or fine tuning is wrong, you would have to explain why that whole idea in and of itself is a weak and lousy idea, instead of saying it is a lousy idea because who designed the designer. It's just it doesn't connect very well, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think this is, I mean, I will try in arguments. I will try to look for flaws in the arguments. This is not a flaw in the design. I mean, this is not a flaw in the argument from fine tuning, that you haven't identified the designer. And just so everyone understands what we're talking about here, just imagine we send out, sometime in the future, we actually send out a spacecraft and it goes all the way to the Andromeda galaxy, and we get to the Andromeda galaxy and suppose you find a planet and there's no life on it, but you find something just like Stonehenge or something like that. You would start thinking, oh, there was life here at some point. There was some sort of intelligent life here. Even if you had no clue what that life was and you had no remnants, if you just found something like Stonehenge, just some stones piled up in a certain way, or if you found pyramids, let's say, and let's say you had no idea who made those pyramids, but you find pyramids there, you'd start thinking, okay, something made these. Now, let alone if you find something like a cell phone or something there's something that's comparably, technologically sophisticated. Even if all life had been wiped out and there was no evidence of life, if you found something like a computer or something like that, if you were to find something, you would be saying, wow, this is proof that there was life here, that there was intelligence here. And if someone like Dawkins were there going, well, if you're going to say that there's intelligence there without explaining who that intelligence is, then you might as well just stop at the stupid iPhone. That wouldn't make any sense. That would be ridiculous, right? Even if you realized you had no clue who designed whatever it is we're talking about, even if you had absolutely no clue and no way of knowing, you would just conclude, okay, something intelligent made that. We don't know otherwise what it is, but there is intelligence behind it. Matter of fact, there are things like this where this fell apart eventually, but there was a probe that went by Mars, and there was a mountain that looked like it had a face on it, and so it was circling. Aliens made this thing and stuff, and they eventually sent another probe to get better pictures of this to see if it's actually a face. It turns out it was just the way shadows. The thing doesn't look like a face at all. It's just the way some shadows were cast at a certain angle that made it look like a face. But notice, the thought would be, if you actually found something that's shaped like a face or an alien face on Mars, and you took a real close look at it, and the more it looks like a face, the less likely you would think it was random. And so anyway, I just think this is an incredibly stupid point that Dawkins is making, that if you want to say something was designed by an intelligence, you would first have to explain the intelligent designer, instead of saying, okay, maybe I don't know anything about the intelligent designer, but it's obvious. There are obvious signs of design here. So I think this is a lame.
I had a discussion with a Muslim before about the whole, God and creation, and the entire idea of fine tuning came up, and I remember that I argued against the idea of intelligent design and fine tuning, and what I told him is, I brought this up eventually, but I said, okay, let us assume that the universe was fine tuned by a specific entity. Then let's argue about what that entity is, and where that entity comes from, and all of that. So you could say, if we assume that is true, how do we explain this? But you can't. I guess you can, but it's a strange way to attack the whole idea of intelligent design by just bringing up that chain of creations. I think that doesn't really work very well.
Yeah, and Brian Stevens is here. Brian Stevens says, I want the cumulative evidence. I don't know which position he means for, but yeah, if you're talking about cumulative evidence for theism or something like that, yeah, this would, I mean, and really most of these arguments would only be relevant in a kind of, cumulative case. If your goal is to argue for the existence of God, it's like, okay, you get something relevant from a cosmological argument. You get, intelligence from a teleological argument. You get moral attributes from a moral argument, things like that. But yeah, because notice you could say the entire universe was designed. That wouldn't even show that the designer cares about us even slightly. You could say the designer cares about life and wanted a universe that may, had life or something like that. That would mean that this is a God who's answering prayer or something like that, right? Something you could pray to. So
I want to see papers. I want to see documents. I want to see manufactured by documents and all that before.
So you shall.
Of the universe, and the best one is probably favored by most physicists is the multiverse theory, whereby
multiverse explanation.
The universe that we know, the universe that we can see with our instruments, is only one of a very, very large number of universes. Some physicists speak of a bubbling foam of universes, and we're just in one bubble. And each bubble has different values of the fundamental constants. And with hindsight, we of course have to be in one of the minority of bubbles that has the fundamental constant set to the right value to give rise to us, because we're here.
Right.
So it's the anthropic principle.
That assumes that, and Victor Stenger wrote a book about this in The Fallacy of Fine-Tuning.
Yeah, he doesn't accept the
that's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that.
I mean, I can't say I'm totally okay with going to multiverse explanations without good reasons to go with multiverse explanations. Because, I mean, keep in mind, that's a pretty big pill to swallow there, saying, we've got our universe, and then there's this maybe infinite array of alternative universes that we have no access to, and they're undetectable and so on. It's kind of a weird explanation. But someone like Dawkins should not, and to be fair, he's not saying this is the way it is. He's saying some people might say. So it's just
I'm pretty sure I remember him saying at some point that he finds it far more unlikely that there is a multiverse than there is a God or something like that, or maybe he was referring to a parallel multiverse. Or I don't know what.
That's actually good, because I mean, I was thinking if he were to appeal to a multiverse, he would be inconsistent, because I've seen him say that if you're thinking of the way the universe is right now, and you sort of imagine your way back in time, you get down to a little singularity. So he says you're going back to something simpler and simpler and simpler and simpler until you get to a singularity. He goes, why, in order to explain that initial start, would you then appeal to something massively more complicated? And he says this with respect to God, like, hey, once you're down to the singularity, you've got this simple little thing, you're looking for an explanation for how this is getting started. Why are you positing something that's massively more sophisticated than the little singularity? But that same reasoning would apply to a multiverse, right? If you're saying, in order to explain that little singularity and how then we got this massive, this infinite array of alternative universes. So yeah, he would be inconsistent appealing to it. But yeah, if he says he's got a problem with that too, then that's good.
I'm not sure if I remember it correctly, but that's what I recall. I'm pretty sure that he was.
I mean, it would make sense for him to hold that position. But yeah. All right.
That the universe is fine-tuned for us rather than us being fine-tuned to the universe.
Yes. I think in any case, it's one thing to say that if any one of those knobs was changed, the whole universe would fall apart. But that doesn't preclude, I suspect, changing more than one.
Right.
If you change several at once, then you could probably make a very large number of universes.
Even the possibility of a multiverse, though, would seem to me to undermine any sort of faith-based notion. I mean, if I'll tell you the best argument that I've heard. The best argument that I've heard is, why is there something rather than nothing? Unfortunately, it's also a very poor argument because either there was something, is the multiverse theory for one, and if there is a multiverse, then that must, by definition, undermine one's confidence that the universe had a beginning and that beginning was God.
Well, even if you have a problem deciding how things began, why there's something rather than nothing, how on earth does it help to postulate an intelligence doing it? I mean,
Right.
it's a mystery how maybe it is a mystery how anything started, but it's a hell of a lot easier to understand how something simple started than something as complicated as a divine intelligence.
Right.
I mean, the thing is, I don't think a multiverse would, as a hypothesis, would rule out the existence of a creator.
No.
I mean, it's entirely, I don't know, from my rudimentary perspective, I would say it is entirely conceivable that there is hypothetically a multiverse, of infinite universes, and that there is also a creator for each one of them, and a creator for each one of those. I'm just saying, this is one of the possibilities, hypotheticals. It doesn't mean, it doesn't. I don't think it puts much doubt. I just see it as an alternative explanation to intelligent design.
Just so you know, Tippy Bear is praying for both of us. That includes you.
Oh yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
No, come on, say what you really want to say. Stop praying for me!
Do you think
It's a waste of time!
How dare you people pray for me? This is terrible.
Yeah. So I disagree with Peter Boghossian right there in what he just said about if you got a multiverse, then what do you need? My goodness, if you that's like saying, hey, I'm in this room and I think this room needs a builder. So if I said, hey, there's good evidence in this room that this room had a builder, and then I get outside and I see there's a whole city, and I go, oh, I guess there doesn't need to be a builder because there's this massive city here. That would make absolutely, I don't know. I think that's stupid. It's like the bigger and more advanced the things are that you're positing, it doesn't seem to do away with the need for a designer. But as far as and keep in mind, you can have. I don't know if anyone argues this, but I assume people do. But I would call it like theistic multiverse theory. Like God creates an infinite array of universes with different properties. In fact, I made a video a while back called "The Multiverse Response to the Problem of Evil," and I basically argued, okay, look, if you atheists get to appeal to the multiverse, this infinite array of alternative universes, in order to explain features of ours, then great. It makes sense if I do it too, but you won't like it. So when you complain about human and animal suffering, perhaps God, and say that God should have made a hedonistic paradise, and that's the only sort of world God would create, a hedonistic paradise. I say, well, maybe God makes an infinite array of different kinds of universes, and maybe the vast majority of them are hedonistic paradises, but he sort of tweaks the properties of different universes to get different results and emphasize different virtues and so on. And so maybe ours is the one where you get a lot of human and animal suffering because God has purposes for that.
Yeah.
All right, so we have Dawkins. I think Dawkins actually did a decent job of summarizing what the argument is, but I think his and he made it funny. Unlike, well, I was like, Craig should have made it funny too, but it wouldn't make sense for Craig to talk about a divine knob twiddler or something like that. But I thought Dawkins' response was pretty weak.
Yeah, I mean, he put out some of the basic response in the end there, but it should have been the main focus in my humble opinion, and it should have been more detailed, more focus on that point instead of talking about the creation of the creator.
So here we have Brian Stevens. He says, apologetics is not about honest inquiry. When you ask someone
We know that already. Yeah.
when you ask someone a straightforward question like what convinced you, it turns into a game where they don't want to answer questions or share what convinced them. Skepticism for the win. I have no clue what you're talking about, Brian. I literally made an entire 34-minute video called Why I'm a Christian and went through exactly what convinced me. And so I don't know what apologists you've been talking about. My goodness. First of all, everyone does apologetics. Apologetics, that just comes from the Greek word apologion, which is from First Peter 3:15. It referred to a defense. The Greek word referred to a defense in court, where someone would bring charges against you, and then you gave your defense. And Peter applies it to giving a defense of people who question what you believe. So people ask you, why do you believe that? Apologetics is, here's why I believe this. Guess what? Atheists do it. Muslims do it. Christians do it. Anytime you are giving a defense of what you believe, you're doing apologetics. So, I mean, you can run into bad apologists, just like you can run into a dumb atheist or a dumb Christian or a dumb Muslim, or people don't even have to be dumb. You could be the sort of person who hasn't really thought through a lot of things. And so you might not be able to answer lots of questions, but to sort of summarize like all of apologetics like this, no.
I would agree a little bit. I mean, I think apologists are terrible people. I would never sit together with them and collaborate with them.
Bunch of knob twiddlers. Bunch of theistic knob twiddlers.
Oh boy.
All right. So, I mean, we've been going a while. Should we watch a little bit of Leonard Susskind here?
Nah, we can do that next time. You can. I need to go.
Okay. All right. We're gonna. So we've gotten through. And really. I like Susskind because he's not a theist. He says he believes in a multiverse, but he calls it a mega verse. I will include the clip for people who want to watch it. Maybe we'll watch it in a future session, because he's kind of cool, because he's like, he understands why people would conclude, okay, this, God. And he says, I don't have any need to. I think that there's there's this bigger universe, megaverse, and there are these bubble universes that are coming out of it, and so on.
Bubbleverse.
Yeah. So he does. But anyway, he seems like a nice, friendly guy. Doesn't seem mean spirited at all. All right, so guys, this has been an introduction to cosmic fine tuning. Again, argument is, it's actually, I mean, if you leave out the phrase knob twiddler, Dawkins actually gives a good summary of what the argument is. Although, as Susskind points out, I mentioned earlier, he says it's actually a couple dozen. It's actually a couple dozen things that have to be finely tuned. He's the one who pointed out some of them, they need to be somewhat precise, in that if they varied by 20 or 30%, then you'd run into problems. And then he points out that some of them are as he puts it, on a razor's edge. Like if you went in either direction, even slightly, things fall apart. And then he says, well, his position is that there's this megaverse, and we got one part of it, and different areas are going to have different properties. And so,
I would say we have given a very good summary and analysis as experts in the field to these questions today, especially me. And I think case closed, I would say. Then, but I would also suggest actually for the next time a line of philosophers. I think we could include. I'm a fan of that guy's defense of Sean Carroll's defense of a naturalist point of view. We can jump into that.
This has just been an introduction, and as people can see, there are obviously people who know more about the physics involved and so on, and the claims and and some of them are just hard to get. Like if you understand, like gravitational constant, gravity could be stronger, gravity could be weaker. Pretty easy to get that. When you start talking about some of the other constants, some of them are significantly harder concepts to grasp. But I mean, these are topics that I'm interested in. Lots of people are interested in. So I'm totally cool if we, do a part 2, part 3, part 4 in the future at some point where, we can bring in more clips or get additional guests who can break things down for us and so on. Because I don't know.
And maybe we could even invite some of those professors who could make us look like idiots here. That would be fun.
That would be very cool. You know what would be funny is if we act like Dawa guys when they're talking about the Trinity and stuff. Ha, 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 that makes no sense. That's confusing. Ha, ha, you idiot. Ha, ha.
That's good.
We should do that just for fun one day. Like invite someone on, but we act like the Dawa guys mocking other people. That would be funny. That would be classic. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, obviously much more can be said, and you could even go into precise detail on specific cosmological constants and things like that. But we wanted to give an introduction, so we've got the Christian perspective being presented by William Lane Craig. We got an atheist response from Richard Dawkins, but something we'll have to look into more in future installments. Here, any final thoughts to anyone before we close out here?
Oh, Sarah Rainey said, AP is often in my prayers too. I just want to say you are in mine as well. And
I pray to chance and physical necessity.
No,
the non-divine knob twiddlers who control my existence.
No, it's a good discussion. It's very interesting to go into these things, and yeah.
But by the way, little side note as I'm closing out. So I'm a theist. AP here is a non-theist, but he's the non-angry type. And there are basically 3 categories when it comes to topics like this. And I saw these back when I was an undergraduate. I double majored in biology and philosophy. So I had to do a senior project and presentation in biology, which by that time I wasn't terribly interested in. Started off in biology and then took philosophy and then got massively more interested in philosophy. But I was almost finished with my biology degree. So for my senior project and presentation, I said, hey, I want to do something that actually crosses over with philosophy. So I want to do intelligent design in biology. And there were 3 professors. There's the one you have to go to sort of guide you through your project. And he was a theist. So I went to a Christian biology professor. But the other 2 guys were both atheists. But one was really mad that I was talking about intelligent design, even though I'm just like, here's the argument and here are some of the responses to it. One guy was like really enraged, and the other guy, who's also an atheist, just sort of found it, the whole thing amusing, but he wasn't angry at all. And I sort of saw that like, okay, you've got the theist, he agrees with me. Then you've got the atheist, and you've got one atheist who's clearly enraged. And it's like, what are you enraged about? That an undergrad, like some undergrad, is talking about design and the possibility of design in biology. You're like enraged. Oh no, I can't stand that. And then there's the other guy who, hey, I don't believe that there's design, but I don't really care if someone thinks that there is or someone argues that there is and so on. But I've noticed there are those 3 categories in all of this for forever. Like anytime there's an argument for theism, there's the theist, then there's the angry, enraged critic who like is horrified by the thought that anyone would look at the universe or look at biology and come to a different conclusion. And then there are the friendlier people. And I'm pointing that out because the 3 video clips are those 3 categories. There's William Lane Craig, he's the theist. There's Dawkins, he's more of the angry. Although he wasn't terrible, he seemed very friendly in that clip there. But he's pretty hostile towards theism. And then Susskind, who I don't see any need. I don't think that prayer changes anything or anything like that. But it doesn't seem it doesn't seem angry that people think there's a fine tuner of the universe. But so we have the enraged atheist like AP and Richard Dawkins, and then we have the friendly atheist. Like
you're just being atheistophobic now. It's terrible.
Welcome to the atheist bashing show, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, terrible.
We'll catch you next time. And not sure what we're talking about next week, but we'll have more for you next weekend, lest AP gets lazy.
Yeah. So stay away from
atheism.
Something.
Catch y'all later.